Yes, you read that right. Hank Thompson was the first African American player for two franchises. He debuted in 1947 with the St. Louis Browns, now the modern-day Baltimore Orioles, and then made history again, appearing along with Monty Irvin in the same game on July 8, 1949 for the New York Giants, or the modern-day San Francisco Giants. Thompson is credited with being the first for the Giants, as he was in the starting lineup at third base, where Irvin did not appear in the game until after being used as a pinch hitter in the 8th inning. Like so many, Thompson started out playing in the Negro Leagues at the young age of only 17 for the Kansas City Monarchs. After his first year in the Negro Leagues, Thompson found himself inducted into the United States Army. Thompson, who was a machine gunner, saw combat action in the famous Battle of the Bulge. Upon his discharge from the Army, late June of 1946, Thompson now returned to play for the Monarchs and helped lead them to the Negro League Championship title. Thompson would start the season with the Monarchs, but moved across the state on July 17, 1947 to make his Major League debut with the St. Louis Browns. While with the Browns, Thompson made some historic firsts for Negro League players in Major League Baseball. The Browns signed a second Negro League player named Willard Brown, and 2 days after Thompson's debut, he and Brown became the first players to be teammates in Major League Baseball. Later in August of that same year, he became one of 2 black players to appear in a game with opposing teams as the Browns played the Indians and Larry Doby. Despite all of these accolades, Thompson's tenure with the Browns was very short-lived, and he was given his unconditional release just over a month with the team on August 23rd of 1947, where he would again rejoin the Kansas City Monarchs for a third time and play for them for the remainder of the 1947 season and all of 1948. At just 23 years old, Thompson again would get a shot at the majors when he signed a contract with the New York Giants. Appearing in 68 games for the Giants minor league affiliate, he was called up on the 4th of July to the major leagues. 4 days later, he would appear as the starting third baseman for the Giants. Later in that game, longtime Negro League veteran and great and future Hall of Famer Monty Irvin would make his debut as a pinch hitter. In addition to Thompson's first for 2 teams, he also was the first to face an opposing black pitcher in a game when he did this against Don Newcombe of the Dodgers, and in 1951, although normally a cornerstone at third base, appeared in a game in the outfield alongside Irvin and rookie Willie Mays to form the first all-black outfield in Major League Baseball history. The smooth-fielding lefty hitter would find some success with the Giants, hitting 20 or more home runs in 3 seasons for the club, and would help lead the Giants to the 1954 World Series. With all of these historic facts that I just shared with you, you might ask yourself, why do I not know who Hank Thompson is? Well, I wish I could say that his life had a storybook ending, but that's not the case. After being released from his contract in 1957 from the Giants, Thompson found himself financially insecure. He became a cab driver in New York, the very city he once helped bring a World Series title to, and then found himself in Texas. Well, while he was in Texas, he was arrested and convicted of an armed robbery, and in 1963 sentenced to a 10-year prison sentence. He served 3 years of this sentence and was paroled in 1967, relocating to Fresno, California to be, of all things, a Parks and Recreation employee for the municipality. In 1969, there were rumors that he was attempting to obtain a job working for baseball, specifically for the National League. However, on September 30th, 1969, at just 43 years old, Thompson died from complications following a seizure. Perhaps because of his untimely death and noted criminal record, Hank is not a household name, like his Negro League counterparts who broke many barriers alongside him. Another talent rising through the ranks of the Negro Leagues was Sam the Jet Jethroe. Jethroe first started playing semi-pro ball in St. Louis, but later would play his first full-time season in the Negro Leagues in 1942. The speedy switch-hitting outfielder would win batting titles and finish as one of the top leaders in stolen bases, doubles, and triples every season. Ironically, in 1945, he was one of 3 players, along with Jackie Robinson, to have a tryout with the Boston Red Sox, but all 3 were turned away as the Red Sox felt it wasn't in their best interest to be the first team with black players. Jethroe would return to his Negro League team from the 1946 and 1947 season and continue his dominance in the league. Being scouted by the same organization, the Brooklyn Dodgers, as Jackie Robinson, they offered him a contract after Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947. Jethroe would spend 1948 and 1949 on the same Montreal Royals team that Robinson preceded in playing. After leading the International League with 89 stolen bases in 1949, Branch Rickey sold the rights of Jethroe to the Boston Braves for an astounding $150,000, which is equivalent to $1.6 million in today's market. The Braves found their outfielder, and the 32-year-old rookie splashed onto the scene with Boston, not the Red Sox, appearing in 141 games, hitting 18 home runs and stealing 35 bases, going on to win the Rookie of the Year award, being the oldest ever to win this award, a record that still stands to this day. Jethroe would spend 2 more seasons in Boston, but at the age of 35, his batting average would dip to just .232. In response, the Braves demoted him to AAA for the 1953 season, where he would bat .309. During the 1953 offseason, he would be traded to the Pirates, where he would only appear in 2 games for the Pirates before retiring at the age of 37. Not only a pioneer on the field, Jethroe would become one of the major centerpieces to suing Major League Baseball to garner pensions for former Negro League players. After years of fighting court battles using his own money, in 1997, MLB came to a settlement to have monthly payments made to former Negro League players. Jethroe would only enjoy this accomplishment for a short period of time, however, as he passed away in 2001. In 2019, the International League placed Jethroe in its Hall of Fame. Perhaps now is the time for baseball to consider putting Jethroe in Cooperstown, based not just on his stats in the Negro Leagues, but the trailblazing efforts he made for all Negro League players to have pensions in their retirement years. Minoso from Cuba's earliest recorded games were in 1945 in his native land of Cuba, playing for a mere $150 a month. The following year, he defected to the United States and played in the Negro Leagues for the team aptly named the New York Cubans. While in the Negro Leagues, he manned third base, leading off for his team until he signed midway through the 1948 season with the Cleveland Indians, who the year before signed the aforementioned Larry Doby. He played his first professional baseball for the Indians in their Dayton affiliate in 1948. In 1949, he made his debut with Cleveland, historically becoming the first Cuban player of color ever to play in the major leagues. He struggled to find his way at the plate in a true position as a starter and was sent back to the minors for the remainder of the 1949 and the entire 1950 season. Going into the 1951 season, after a great year in the minors, the Indians felt they didn't have any room on their current Major League roster, and on April 30th sent Minoso packing to the Chicago White Sox. This would turn out to be the chance Minoso was waiting for, as he would become an All-Star in his first full season in the majors. He would be an All-Star through 1954 and mark that honor a total of 9 times over his 17-year playing career. Minoso amassed a lifetime .298 batting average, and after retiring for the first time after the 1964 season, he would move to the Mexican League and play another 8 seasons. After retirement from the Mexican League, he would become a coach with the White Sox. At the age of 50, the itch to play baseball came back, and Minoso would suit up for 3 games in 1976 to collect a hit, making him the 4th oldest player to collect a hit in the majors. The gimmick would return in 1980, and at 54 he would play again in 2 games for the White Sox, this time not collecting any hits. 1980 signified Minoso's 5th decade appearing in a major league game. One would think he would be done at this point, but not many. In 1993, he would suit up again at 67 to make an appearance playing for the Independent League's St. Paul Saints, thus marking his 6th decade in professional baseball, just not in the major leagues. But it gets even better. In the year 2003, he again rejoined the St. Paul Saints, taking an at-bat and drawing a walk. So in total, he played in 7 different decades. This is definitely something of noteworthy designation, and probably is a record that will never be broken again. However, when you think of Minoso, don't think of him as just the guy who played in 7 different decades, 5 in the majors, but remember him as a pioneer, like so many others on this list, paving the way for black and Cuban players in Major League Baseball. A first on this list, the first black pitcher to be a first black player on a team. Trice was not the first black player to be a pitcher in the major leagues, as that was little-known Brooklyn Dodgers player Dan Bankhead, but he was the first to integrate a team with the Athletics, now the modern-era Oakland A's. Signed by the Athletics in 1951, Trice previously spent time in the Negro Leagues and was assigned to the Athletics' C-League level minor league affiliate. He would spend through 1953 in the Athletics minor league system, including winning 21 games for the club's AAA affiliate in 1953. That season would not go ignored, and the Athletics called him up in September of 1953. He made 3 starts to finish out the season in the major leagues that year. He split time in the majors in AAA the following season, not matching the success he did the previous year. However, he did have a complete game shutout against the Yankees in April early in that season. Arm troubles would develop for Trice as he and the team made the move to Kansas City in 1955, and after appearing in 4 games of relief in April for the Athletics, he would be demoted in May of 1955, where his struggles would continue. After the conclusion of the 1955 campaign, Trice and the Athletics would part ways, and he found himself ineffectively pitching in the Mexican League through 1958, where his stats end. In total, Trice appeared in only 26 games over his major league career, but he was the first in A's history to break the color barrier. A few years after their crosstown rival integrated, a young Ernie Banks made his major league debut for the Chicago Cubs also in September of 1953. Playing in semi-pro and church leagues in Texas, the Kansas City Monarchs noticed a young Ernie Banks. In 1951, he would play for the Monarchs, but his baseball was put on hold as he would go serve in the Korean War, only to return to the Monarchs in 1953 after his discharge. However, it should be noted, Banks stayed in athletic shape, as while he was in the military he played part-time with the Harlem Globetrotters, a little-known fact that many don't realize about Ernie. During the Monarchs' 1953 season, he would sign a late contract with the Cubs, never appearing in a minor league game for the Cubs, and made his debut on September 17, 1953. He would appear in 10 games his rookie season, and in 1954 the starting shortstop position was his, appearing in every single game for the club his rookie season. In 1955, the name Banks went from minor blip in Chicago to budding superstar as he cracked 44 home runs in his second full-time season in Chicago. The 14-time All-Star, 2-time back-to-back MVP, would be a mainstay in Chicago for 19 total seasons, ending his career with over 500 home runs and over 2,500 hits. A Chicago icon for many years, post-playing career as an overall recognizable name for his approachable personality, Ernie would forever be known as Mr. Cub and Mr. Sunshine, always wanting to famously play too. Roberts is recognized as the first black Pirates player to play in the majors. However, the previous year, a Puerto Rican-born player named Carlos Bernier actually made his appearance for the Pirates, also a black man. I was really unable to find why baseball recognizes Roberts over Bernier, but perhaps I will speak on behalf of Bernier in a separate video in the future. Roberts started out as a 17-year-old second baseman for the Kansas City Monarchs in 1947. After a season with the Monarchs, Roberts signed a pro contract with the Boston Braves. He played one season in the Braves organization before being sent to the Pirates, where he would spend 2 more seasons in the minors. In 1954, the Pirates gave Roberts a chance at the majors, and he became the starting second baseman, appearing in 134 games his rookie season. Roberts was known for his glove as being a very proficient fielder, but only yielding a .232 batting average his rookie season. In 1955, he found himself back in the minors with a small call-up of only 6 games in Pittsburgh. After a solid season of batting over .300 in Triple-A, Roberts was back in the majors in 1956. This would be short-lived, however, as his struggles at the plate continued, and he was again demoted and later dealt to the Kansas City A's, where he went straight to the minors for the A's. At 26 years old, Roberts never played in the majors again and bounced around playing in the minors for various teams until 1963, when he retired from baseball. After his retirement from baseball, Roberts would become a university security guard, and tragically, at the age of only 40 years old, was killed by a drunk driver while changing his own tire of his car. Nearly 20 years passed before it was known about Roberts' death among baseball, and many had not realized that one of baseball's early pioneers from the Negro Leagues was gone and almost forgotten. Many more years would pass, but the Pirates recognized this, and in 2006 would honor Roberts at PNC Park. Since 2018, Roberts' son, Curtis Jr., has assisted the Pirates in hosting Curtis Roberts Step Up to the Plate, promoting the importance of diversity in baseball with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The same exact day that Curtis Roberts made his debut in Pittsburgh, Tom Alston would be the first black player to appear in a game for the St. Louis Cardinals. Alston's earliest baseball records indicated he played in Canada when he first began playing professionally. After a year in Canada, Alston moved to the West Coast and played for the now famous Pacific Coast League. August Busch, the owner of the Cardinals at the time, thought that it would be important to have a black player on his roster, and this would help prevent a boycott from Anheuser-Busch products being purchased. The Cardinals signed Alston from San Diego of the PCL, and at 28 years old, Alston would man first base for the Cardinals in April of 1954. He would spend 66 games in the majors with St. Louis, but would split the remainder of the 1954 season in Triple-A. Alston would only appear in 25 more games between 1955 and 1957 in St. Louis, spending those 3 seasons primarily in Triple-A. Due to some mental illness issues, at the age of 31 years old, Alston would be done with professional baseball. However, his legacy was made, paving the way for some future greats in St. Louis Cardinals baseball history. Like the Giants, the Reds, 5 years later, would feature 2 players in the same game to make their debuts as the first black players for the franchise. Unlike the Giants, however, Nino Escalera and Chuck Harmon were used as pinch hitters, and neither were in the starting lineup that day. Escalera, a first baseman from Puerto Rico, was originally signed by the New York Yankees and played in their minor league system for 3 seasons before being dealt to the White Sox, who then dealt him away to the Indians after the 1952 season. In 1953, Escalera would again pack his bags to play in the minors for the Reds and would get a call-up, winning a job in the majors going into the 1954 season. History was made for the Reds in Milwaukee on April 17th of 1954 when Escalera pinch hit in the 7th. That very inning, Chuck Harmon would make his debut right after Escalera. We will touch more on Harmon in a few minutes. Escalera would only appear in 73 total games for the Reds, all during the 1954 season. Escalera would log over 1,500 total minor league games until he retired from being a player in 1962 and would become a scout for decades in baseball. In 2015, Escalera was recognized as one of the top 75 Puerto Rican players ever to play Winter League baseball in his native Puerto Rico. Chuck Harmon is someone that might be a familiar name to you. Harmon was 30 years old when he made his debut with the Reds. At this point in his career, Harmon had played in the Negro Leagues, served 3 years in the United States Navy, and even tried out to play professional basketball with the historic Boston Celtics, but didn't make the cut. He was an exceptional athlete who played high school and college basketball as well as baseball. By the time Harmon made it to the majors, he was 30 years old and never really considered a starting player. He would stay in the majors through 1957, playing for not just the Reds, but the Cardinals and Phillies as a part-time player. After being let go by the Phillies, Harmon would bounce around the minors until his late 30s until he officially retired as a player in 1961. Post-playing career, he would be inducted into the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame as well as the University of Toledo Athletic Hall of Fame. It would be in the fall of 1954 when our nation's capital in Washington, D.C.'s franchise would field its first black baseball player. Carlos Paula was discovered in all places independent league baseball in Texas. Not a lot of research is available prior to the Cuban native playing in Texas, so one can assume that he came to the United States in the 1940s or early 1950s. The Senators bought the contract of Paula from the independent league team prior to the 1954 season. He would appear in 132 games in the minors before a call-up in September of 1954 to the Major League club. He would appear in 9 games to finish out the season with the Senators that year. Going into 1955, Carlos would have an excellent year, his first full year in the majors, and he would appear in 115 games and finish the season playing the outfield and batting .299. In 1956, however, a slow start with a batting average below 200, he was sent back down to the minor leagues, never to appear in the majors again. He would continue to play for various teams in America through 1959, only to play one recorded season in Mexico in 1960. It is unclear if Carlos played beyond 1960 outside of the United States, but he was lost at a very young age as well when he passed away at only 55 years old in 1983 while living in Miami, Florida. Emerging young star, Elston Howard made his debut with the New York Yankees. Howard, a St. Louis native, turned down scholarship offers to play college football, electing in 1948 instead to sign with the Kansas City Monarchs. The Yankees signed Howard to play in the 1950 season, and he spent his first year playing in the Yankees minor league system. As like many in 1951 and 1952, Howard served in the United States Army. He returned for the 1953 and 1954 season and played in AAA, putting together an outstanding season, winning the league's MVP in 1954. In 1955, Howard made the Yankees' major league roster despite having MVP Yogi Berra doing the catching duties, and he was used as the backup catcher in some in left field. Howard would play the outfield, be the backup catcher, and even play some first base until finally 1960 when he took over the regular catching duties for an aging Berra. In 1963, he would have his best season, winning the league's MVP award. During his playing career, Howard was a 12-time All-Star, won 4 World Series, won 2 Gold Gloves, and an MVP award. After a brief stint with Boston, Howard retired as a player and became a coach with the Yankees through 1979. He stepped away from his coaching duties as his health declined, and at just the age of 51, Howard passed away from a heart condition. His legacy with the Yankees was that his number was retired, and a plaque now sits in Yankees Monument Park designating him as the first black player to appear in Yankee pinstripes. One side note that many don't know about Howard is that he is credited with inventing the batting donut, a lead weight used by hitters in the batting circle before coming to the plate. This is an item that is still used in baseball to this day at various levels of the game and not just at the major league level. Before the 35th President of the United States, there was another John Kennedy, who became the first black player to appear in a game for the Philadelphia Phillies in 1957. Not to be confused with the other John Kennedy who played for the Senators and the Red Sox, This Kennedy had the shortest major league career of any of the pioneers on this list, with only appearing in 5 games for his entire major league career. Originally a New York Giants farmhand, Kennedy was released after the 1953 season. He would spend the next few seasons in the Negro Leagues, and in 1956 would be one of the league's top hitters with the Kansas City Monarchs. Shortly, they sold his contract to the Phillies after that season. Primarily a shortstop and third baseman, he would make his first appearance in April of 1957 at 30 years old, a controversy in itself. Kennedy was not honest with the Phillies about his age, as they thought they had the next Ernie Banks and a young 22-year-old shortstop. Instead, he was actually 30 years old. In his brief stint in the majors, he would only get 2 at-bats, never recording a hit, and was used only as a pinch runner and fielder. He would be sent down on May 3rd, spending a total of just over a week in the majors, never to return. He would retire as a player after the 1961 season. Despite what happened, Kennedy once stated in an interview he felt if he was 10 to 15 years younger, he would have had a long major league career, but was very fortunate for the time that he did have in the major leagues, as many of his colleagues never had the opportunity that he had, even though it was only for 5 games. The second to last team to integrate was the Detroit Tigers in 1958. Ozzie Virgil, originally born in the Dominican Republic, moved to the United States in his early teens. He attended high school in the Bronx, but served in the military before he could play baseball professionally. At 21, Virgil began his career in the minor leagues, playing professionally for the Giants. He would make his major league debut with the Giants and becoming the first Dominican player to appear in the major leagues. A year later, he would be the first black player to play for the Detroit Tigers, playing third base on June 6, 1958. From 1958 to 1961, Virgil would be up and down in the majors for the Tigers. Before the end of the 1961 season, Ozzie would be traded to the A's, then found himself traded a few more times until he landed with the original team that drafted him, the Giants. He would retire after the 1969 season as a player-coach, but would remain a coach with the team through 1975, until he moved on to being a coach in the Expos, Padres, and Mariners system with his good friend, manager Dick Williams. He even returned for a season in 1996 to manage a rookie ball affiliate with the Giants. Virgil's son also had a pretty decent career in the majors, appearing in 2 All-Star games during his 11-year career. In the 2000s, Ozzie Sr. returned back to his native country, and the airport that he started his baseball journey at many, many years ago was renamed in his honor in his hometown of Monte Cristi. It took until July of 1959 for the Boston Red Sox to integrate as the last pre-expansion baseball club. If you recall earlier in this video, the Red Sox had a tryout with Jackie Robinson before the Brooklyn Dodgers signed him. So right now, I could be talking about how Robinson was the first black player for the Red Sox, but instead it took nearly 12 years for that designation to go to Elijah Pumpsie Green. An all 3-sport athlete in high school from California, Green began his journey to the majors playing in the professional Pacific Coast League. A middle infielder, Green signed with the Red Sox in 1956, working his way up from the minor leagues until his call-up in July of 1959. He would stick in the majors and appear in 133 games his second season. He would primarily be used as a part-time player with the Red Sox through 1962. He would be traded to the new expansion New York Mets, but would only appear in 17 games as a Met in 1963, as he was demoted to the minors and spent all of 1964 in the Mets minor league system. After a third season in AAA with the Mets, and later the Tigers, Green retired from baseball at the age of 31. After his playing career, he moved back to California, working in a high school and coaching its baseball team. In 2018, the Boston Red Sox finally immortalized Green by electing him to the Red Sox Hall of Fame. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, remembering the first black players for each Major League Baseball team prior to expansion in Major League Baseball. Perhaps in a future video I will explore the pioneer players of each team in the expanded era of baseball. But more importantly, this video is to not just recognize the importance of April 15th in Major League Baseball, Jackie Robinson Day, but to bring the names of the lesser known important men in baseball's great history to light. Only a few of these players on this list are still living today, and many of the players on this list passed many years ago, with very little other than a side note in a local newspaper. Today, as the Negro Leagues celebrate their 100th anniversary in 2020, it is important to not just recognize those who broke into Major League Baseball, but so many players who did not have the opportunity to play at the highest level of baseball in America. Thank you for joining me, sharing my love of baseball and the history of some of the greatest pioneers in the sport. Hopefully this presentation will give you some more insight about the history and importance of these great pioneers that played Major League Baseball.